It's 4-4 in Trials of Osiris, and your entire team is dead. It's a 1v1. You glance at the radar and notice the last remaining opponent running in like an idiot. So you swap to your shotgun and turn them into Swiss cheese, leaving them one shot. All you need to do now is follow through with a punch to seal the deal. Your flawless, happiness, and chance of being a functional member of society all rest on one button. And it misses. Why does this keep happening? And how can you take advantage of it? Destiny 2 is 7 years old, and no one has explained why melees suck ass. So, let's understand it. First, we need to determine where the melee animation tracks to. I set up a simple test which obscures most of the target player. The target inches closer as I continuously melee until my melee tracks. Using this test, we can see that the melee animation requires a line of sight with the center of the target player. This is important for later. With the target player center mass being obstructed, there also appears to be a separate melee condition that allows for hits, given you're actually aiming at the target. Interestingly, there is no melee lunge, only damage. If a target satisfies all conditions to be meleeed, they are a valid target. First of all, let's just discuss how a melee works. There's an invisible cone projected out of your character, similar to an accuracy or aim assist cone, but this one is humongous and awesome because for punching things. If a target is within this cone, pressing your melee keybind will cause you to automatically lock onto the target and perform the melee animation. The melee cone consists of two key components, radius rho and error angle theta. The radius defines melee range, while the error angle corresponds to the cone's width, so you don't have to actually be aiming at someone's body to hit them. Additionally, a clear line of sight to the target player's center is required for it to be a valid target. During melee animation, the player tracks their target across the screen and lunges toward them. During this lunge, the cone is effectively narrowed as they approach the target. A melee whiff happens when a target becomes invalid during animation, either by leaving the melee cone's bounds or having an obstructive hitbox or path. If a target becomes invalid during melee animation, the player will melee where they were instead of where they are, even if they're right in front of you. Looking back at the components of a melee cone, a whiff happens if a target exits the range bound, exits the width bound, or there is a change in line of sight. Now that we know this, we can analyze whiff instances and even recreate them for ourselves. Starting off with the range, anything that increases the target's distance from the player when they're at the edge of melee range will increase the likelihood of a whiff. As you can see here, my dodge is making my friend's melee whiff. This is especially strong when shotgunning and is something you can notice a lot of top players doing. Before we discuss this further, we first need to acknowledge the role that Peeker's Advantage and client-side game views have on melees. Most of you already know what Peeker's Advantage is, as it is a well-known phenomenon within FPS games. Essentially, what you see and the opponent see is the past, since there's a delay between real-time information and the presentation of that information to the other player. I'm going to use the term Peeker's Advantage and Disadvantage as a way to show who is receiving delayed information. Shiver Strike is one of my favorite abilities in the game, and it was busted before the rework. If you've played against a Shiver Strike Titan before the rework, you will know exactly how strong this advantage is. During melee animation, the Titan speeds towards you, making contact with the opponent and giving them considerable momentum. At the time, Titans were able to chain this with a normal melee, which would occur nearly simultaneously with a momentum transfer. What client-side game view does is show the victim delayed information. The Titan is closer on their screen than on the victim's. The Titan is out of range for the victim during most of this animation, and the momentum transfer to the target only worsens this. As the target flies back, their hitbox lags behind for the Titan. They technically receive client-side disadvantage, but what this does is allow them to melee where you were instead of where you are. The original Shiver Strike melee combo perfectly shows the power of client-side game views. They essentially gain an advantage in the fight using Peeker's Advantage and Disadvantage. This allows the Titan to execute the other player while remaining outside the victim's melee range.
No, the predict! The predict! He knew! I should could read me like a book. He literally opens me up
Oh yeah, he opens you up. He opens.
Peeker's Advantage is also responsible for crazy melee lunges from opponents. While you're moving away from the opponent sees a delayed version of your hitbox, which remains inside their melee range, while on your screen, you are out of it, and they're out of your melee range. If you are unable to move fast enough, you can essentially put yourself at a disadvantage, as they can hit you, but you cannot hit them. This stretches out their melee animation from your point of view, giving them a crazy melee launch. Moving back to melee range bound manipulation, we can also use geometry or trig to gain an advantage. The melee cone is projected from the player camera, which is positioned in the player's head. Because of this, the player higher up will enter melee range before the player lower down. We can compare this to the base of a triangle being shorter than the hypotenuse, even though the law of cosines is more applicable here.
You punch me and it misses, and then I punch you while staying in the same place and it hits. That's what I'm trying to do.
Okay. Oh.
Oh. Try punch me?
Oh. Yo, where'd that come from? What the fuck? Oh my god.
This is pretty strong.
Oh my god.
Essentially, the lower player can melee the upper player, but the upper player is out of range for the lower player. This explains why you're more likely to lose melee fights when you're floating in the air or standing on a slope. The opponent is simply out of your range. Cone angle related whiffs are often the most frustrating. Like I said earlier, the effective width of the cone is narrowed when closer to the target. Normally, this wouldn't be an issue because the melee animation tracks so aggressively, so this is a rare whiff instance. However, remember that the melee tracks the center of the player hitbox, not the hitbox itself. Because of this, the target does not technically take up a larger portion of the cone when they're closer to you. So, the closer you are to each other, the more likely the target's center is able to exit your width bound during animation. This can be done by the opponent crouching, sliding, or even falling towards you, which drops the target center out of your width bound, causing a whiff.
You ready?
What? What?
So I'm gonna be falling from above, and I want you to basically melee it.
Like that? It's instinct.
If you want to utilize this in order to win more melee fights, simply jump out of their width bound between hits. You'll sometimes force a whiff on the opponent, but more often than not, you're just invalidating yourself as a target by being out of their view, preventing the opponent melee animation altogether. If you watch skilled players, you might notice a lot of them jump between punches, and this is why.
Oh my god.
Are you kidding me? What are you doing, Ashton? How are you avoiding the melees?
Get it back in the well, the little freak.
I was trying to make it back to Tyler.
It's a back jump from a front melee!
On a similar note, I wouldn't recommend going laterally in order to exit with bounce, as the tracking is simply too strong. It's much better to play range or go even closer and try to jump to break line of sight.
Yeah, actually.
Nah, don't run at me.
Before we cover the last condition for melee whiffs, let's go back to Peeker's advantage and talk about reaction time. Some people have faster and some people have slower reaction times. The average person is about 250 milliseconds and pro gamers are about 150 milliseconds. Let's assume we have a moderate reaction time of 200 milliseconds. I set up a test that determines how much network latency my friend and I have between each other. We are both recording at 60 FPS and the clips are synced to the match timer. Both clips are retimed at 50% to make the latency more noticeable. There are 4 frames of delay between when my opponent's melee registers on their screen and when it registers on mine. Doing the math, that is about 67 milliseconds of latency. More accurately, my friend gains almost 70 milliseconds of advantage on top of my reaction speed, which is a biological limit. Anything he does will take 70 milliseconds to reach me on my end and another 200 milliseconds for my nervous system to interpret that information. Let's assume he doesn't know I'm there and we both react at the same time. That's still 70 milliseconds faster than me. Also, my friend and I live in the same area, so just imagine the latency with international opponents. 70 milliseconds isn't a whole lot of time, but to put this into perspective, a TTK change of 80 milliseconds is what made target lock a must-have perk during the Immortal meta. This latency is what makes trades so common, and it's responsible for melee inconsistencies. In order to simulate lag, my friend and I installed a game at the same time while also running an 8K resolution video in the background. This puts a strain on the network bandwidth, increasing ping and packet loss. It is essentially a form of net limiting. In fact, you might recognize this because this is what we use during the crafting.
Okay.
I shot him twice.
You can see that the interactions between my friend and I are inconsistent, delayed, and unpredictable. It increases client-side advantage and disadvantage, so you don't really gain anything from doing this other than an error code. Obstructions are the last condition that causes a melee whiff. The obstructions that players have access to are barricades, stasis crystals, and cover. Titan barricades are the easiest tool for consistently forcing a melee whiff. There's a specific position where it could be behind the barricade, which guarantees opponent melee misses while ensuring your own still connect.
Like you're almost touching it. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
what? Oh.
Similarly, standing behind a short stasis crystal, such as one from a dusk field, will cause an opponent's melee to track, but not connect, as the crystal blocks the path, but not the center of the target player. You can also use cover to block the path mid-animation, in order to cause a whiff.
Oh.
It just sent you back into cover. What?
Sometimes melees are just weird. For example, you can teleport during a melee duel. Every example I've clipped involved an opponent melee, so I'm assuming the lunge animation gave me momentum for some reason. There could also be an animation cancel happening, interrupting the part of the animation that slows the player down at the end of the melee lunge, similar to a sword skate.
I couldn't do anything.
I'm not too certain.
That was so fucked up.
Where did I go?
Additionally, none of my information is confirmed by Bungie. It's based on observation and testing, so it's the best explanation we have for now.
Dumbass, so why would that happen?
What? You shot me through the wall!
No, you jumped right in front of my spray. Okay.
Excuse me? What just happened?
I stepped out of your melee code angle.
Oh, if only somebody uploaded a video on
Only
that.
someone uploaded a video explaining it.
You haven't yet. That's legit. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Legit.
Keep going.
Actually, you gotta get that out before the game dies.
Oh.
Too late.
Dude, I thought you killed me too. That's how crazy it was.
I hate melee whip so much.
Only someone made a video about it.
Dude, you should use that clip of us.
Hold on to that, can't lie.
No, oh my god. Ability spam the game. Dude, melee whip? Again? Are we doing a video on this? I missed!
Tell me your craziest melee whiff stories. Also give me some video ideas, please.